Today, I have the profound honor of speaking with David Redd, a songwriter whose work transcends the noise of our digital age to touch something deeply human. I first encountered David at the Troubadour, where his performance stopped me in my tracks. Since then, I've been captivated by his thoughtful Substack writings, his brand new album, Love is Everything and It Will Not Save You, and his rare ability to build authentic community in an industry often obsessed with streams versus going with the stream of life. David represents everything I admire about the LA songwriter scene. He hustles and flows, creates with vulnerability, and empathetically gives back to his fans, like me. Today, we're diving deep into his journey, his craft, and the beautiful contradictions that make his work, and as a reflection, living in the world today, so compelling. David, welcome to Wonderkind.
Thank you for having me.
It was an incredible journey to think about, seeing you for the first time, and you had some of these songs in this amazing new album. How does it feel to finally release this music into the world? And I think this is probably the first week of this album. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how that's gone for you.
It feels great. I'll be honest. I was so stressed, tired, fed up with this album until the moment it came out. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not the world's biggest Spotify fan, but the moment I saw it on Spotify, there is something of like, okay, it's a whole thing. It's a whole package. I think what the biggest piece of it is just remembering that it's an album. It's not a collection of songs. Mm-hmm. And so when you hear a couple of songs come out and you're so focused as an artist on like, okay, are people listening to this song? Does it fit in this playlist? Or what's the reaction to this single? You lose sight of the fact that, no, what I made was a body of work. What I made had a beginning, middle, and end. So to have the full album out there and to know that people are listening to the full album and taking that whole thing in feels really good.
Wow. Yeah, I was taking it in, and I think, specifically with you and your extreme range of styles that you choose from. When I listened to the album and I thought, man, David is making me work for it. I need to follow that beginning, middle, and kind of say, okay, he took us on a left turn here, and now we're, Jitney Bus Blues here, and we have this beautiful ballad. So what was the process like of even ordering that album and creating this cohesive whole out of many experimental journeys?
Honestly, it's going to sound less complex than you think. A lot of it is chronological in terms of when I was writing the songs. And I do think that says something because it is supposed to be an authentic expression of what I've been going through, right? So there was a little bit of futzing with it, but most of it was just feeling out what makes sense in terms of the progression that I was going through as a person, as an artist, as just like someone living in the world. And also thinking a little bit about the flow of the energy of the music, up and down, left and right. So it doesn't, like, you want some abrupt terms, but you also want to make sure that you're bringing people along for a ride. But yeah, most of it was just born from what order did these songs show up in? And it does make sense for then the progression of what story I'm trying to tell, because the story I'm trying to tell is my own. I'm very much a believer if you just tell your story as truthfully as possible and not get too tight up in like the ego side of it, but just like, here's the story that I'm telling of me, and you put it out there, people will find something universal in that if you've been authentic in telling your own side of it.
Wow. You have a very distinct voice, and it's so powerful because you are so strong in your beliefs. I kind of wanted to know how this writing process affects you. What fires you up so much to have this much passion about telling your story, whether it's your Substack, whether it's your songs?
I mean, it's an old cliche, but like, I kind of just have to, right? Like, I'm very, I'm a mess when I'm not writing. So honest truth, the backstory of all of it is I met my now wife at the end of 2019. She's from France. I'm living in LA at the time. We had this sort of whirlwind romance over the course of like the end of 2019, early 2020. We're back and forth. It's beautiful. I'm traveling. I'm seeing the world. She's meeting my whole family. And then together we're in New York on March 7th, 2020. I just played a sold out show, released the first single for my last album. And then she gets an email from the French government saying, you are being repatriated now. That's it, right? So there's like then a quarantine period for the next 4 or 5 months. We're separate until I was able to sneak my way into France, because technically Americans weren't allowed at that point in time. And I was just in this place where I had just put out an album, or it was in the process really of putting out the album. I was far away from home. I was in a new world. I was seeing a lot of what was going on back home in America, and just so like, I don't know, throttled by it, and felt so distant and far from it, and at the same time felt so very uncreative. But I was in love. I was in love. I was traveling the world. I was in the south of France, man. I was living a really beautiful life and with a really beautiful person and falling in love in the most scenic, beautiful, romantic way, and deeply dissatisfied at the same time. And so there was a lot of this frustration that you're hearing on the album is born from a creative frustration, as well as a very authentic, like, human frustration. I wasn't connected to a sense of community. I wasn't connected to a sense of purpose. And I wanted to feel like I was doing something to contribute, because the whole world was struggling at that time, but America in particular was going through something at that moment in time. And to look back on that and feel fairly, like, helpless and distant from it, and not have, like, my art, because I wasn't in that zone, I wasn't in that season, that bred a lot of frustration, which then comes out all in a blur. I've often thought of this metaphor of, I feel at times like there's a fire that I'm afraid to let loose of. Or I even think of, like, if you know those X-Men movies, like when Cyclops is, like, afraid to open his eyes, right? But what I've learned is that fires can be cleansing. And so there is something to, like, holding it until it's ready to come out, but also not being afraid to then let it come out.
Well, what's interesting also about your Cyclops letting out of this fire, it doesn't seem to torch anyone specifically. I don't feel attacked. You're
Good.
commenting on society. And, you're talking about a very difficult time in COVID, but when I listened to the album, I was thinking, David's talking about the last 6 months.
Sadly, it's still relevant.
It was extremely relevant. And while I came away with a sense of, boy, we have work to do societally, or I need to do my part, to cultivate and nurture this community. And that's honestly part of the reason I reached out to you to come speak live versus doing a remote interview or something else. You somehow miraculously balance this tenuous tightrope of not being preachy or complaining about the situation. You're kind of just like, hey, this is a really tough societal moment. I'm also in love. We're trying to figure out, am I okay, is kind of an ongoing theme, and I hope you can continue to let out that fire, because it's not only healing you, but I think it makes your listeners really question, what self-work do I need to do as a result of this?
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think there's something, preachiness is something I'm constantly afraid of. I am conscious of that. I think I have my preachy moments, but I'm learning to rein those in. And I think something that's been helpful to recognize just this idea of, like, sending light beams out into the universe and letting whoever needs to be drawn into those be drawn into them. Trying to think about, as a younger person, I was definitely louder, definitely yelled more. And I wanted to be somebody who drew people in versus forced myself on. And I think this was also, it was an important experience. I really remember being, like, very conscious of that idea of, like, I want to have a better batting average. I want to say less. I want to speak less, but I want to say more. And careful what you wish for. I then, like, moved to France where I didn't speak the language, and I had to be in, like, social situations where I'm, like, barely following the thread of the conversation. So I did get that. And now there's an interesting moment in my life now where I'm, like, trying to rebalance that, because I do have things to say, but I think finding a way to just speak it, say your truth, again, not hold on too tightly to, like, this is my truth, but, like, this is a truth, and believe that people will be drawn to it, and believe that people will connect to it. And it's felt liberating to not hold it so tightly. And at the same time, I feel like it's helping me not feel like, all right, I'm just another guy speaking his mind on the internet,
Have you tried writing any songs in French?
I haven't yet. I do speak French now. My French tutor said this really beautiful thing to me. He said, when you learn a new language, you birth a new soul, which I absolutely believe. I am a different person when I speak French than I am when I speak English. And there's also certain things about languages that are just good for, like, French is great for poetry. A lot of things rhyme in French, and they're French people. The French culture, the French people, the French language has this certain delicatesse. You can say something very simply, and it has a lot of beauty in it for its simplicity. And I do think that lends itself really well to my kind of songwriting. I frankly haven't been writing enough, and I need to, but I do really want to. That's like a next project for me for sure, is to try to write something in French. It's a little daunting. I'm scared of it. Well, but that means I should do it.
I think so. I mean, I haven't been writing enough. I think you've been writing quite a bit based on this output. This is obviously a massive number of songs relative to the digital landscape of single and you're out. Yeah. What motivated you to kind of go old school, put out such a beautiful collection of songs?
I'm just an album guy. There's a little bit of me that's like a bit of a curmudgeon, a bit of a Luddite, and I like that. I like records, and that's how I listen to music. I don't really listen to playlists very much. I don't listen to, like, Spotify algorithms. Like, if I'm going to put on music, most of the time, I'm going to put on an album. Yeah. And so it was actually a bit of a struggle at first. Should I make an EP? Should I just make a couple songs? And I was pretty, like, stuck in my ways of, like, no, I'm going to make an album. And that's the mode of expression that I'm most comfortable in. I think that there's value in now I see in changing it up, trying new things, and being a little bit more okay with like, all right, this is how the digital world works. Let me exist in this era. That's how I live. Albums to me are more capable of containing the complexity of emotions because you can have this whole range. And I think in particular, if you just hear one song of mine from this album, or even worse, if you just hear one clip on TikTok of one song of mine, you're going to get a very particular impression. For instance, it could be that very fiery, kind of frustrated, cynical side. But if you work through the whole album, by the time you get to the end of the album, you see the full context around that cynicism. You see the full context around that frustration. You also see the soft, the tender, the loving side, the optimistic side. And I think that's much more interesting to me also, in order to like think about what I'm doing and why this speaks to you, or why I think what I have to offer is valuable. It's not in that singular emotion. It's in the complex emotion that you can't put a name to, that you have to have 10 songs to explain.
Yeah, and take you through the journey of your experience. It's almost like if I had to think about a roller coaster emotion, you are thinking so hard that almost like it bursts you and then like and oozes out and just calm again and expressing that you've tried everything you can to be thoughtful about the world. I think your music demands thoughtfulness. Like you have to kind of hone in and focus, or else you're going to lose serious lyrics. And even on things that you may not know exactly the meaning behind the lyrics, you're like, oh, I know David put a lot of work and thoughtfulness into this. Just to speak to your process a little bit more, your tutor mentioned in another language what that's like. What was it like transitioning and sort of converting your normal English speech into your voice? What is that like, balancing the written word as told through song?
I tend to go back and forth. I'll have periods where I'm not interested in writing songs because I feel like I can't do enough. There's not enough space in this. So I'll want to write long form stuff. You know, I'll need 800, 900 words to explain myself, and I want to get into long sentences. I'm a long form kind of a guy. And then I'll recognize, no, that's too much. Like people need impacts right away, and a song can do so much without words. A song can do so much with just the emotion of the music itself. So I guess I try to just be attuned to what it is that I'm feeling and where I'm at, and what, like listening to what I want to express and how I want to express it, and just trust that and not be forceful with it. But then at a certain point I have to connect to the fact that I'm a musician. I've put this hat on, and I can always take the hat off, but like it's a hat I've chosen for myself, and to deny that would be silly. There is then also, conversely, an intentional period of, okay, wear the hat, dude. You know, especially during pandemic, especially here in LA, it's easy to hide away. It's easy to isolate yourself. It's easy to just kind of go through your day in, day out. But like I was saying before, when you feel that sense of like, well, how can I contribute? The best way that I know how to contribute is to write songs. And sometimes they don't show up. Sometimes you have to struggle with them. Sometimes you have to like pace around your neighborhood for hours on end just to like try and find that one word that sits there, but that's the job. And so I think it's important for me to just like treat it a little bit more like a job and decide that like, yeah, I need to finish writing this record. So time to put on that hat, time to put on your big boy pants and go to work. And I think that that's something that as I've grown up as an artist, I recognize more, versus when you're younger, you're like, okay, this sounds like a cool idea. Let me just follow it. And then I won't have any other inspiration for a week at a time or something. It sits fallow.
Wow. Well, putting on the big boy pants, I think, is a great segue to how you've managed your digital persona in this society. Everything changes. I was really blown away with the way you engage with your fans.
Cool.
Instagram seems still organic. How do you cultivate the sense of community, which is a big theme in your journey in LA as a songwriter, and you're giving back? And how do you avoid being jaded in this society when it can be pretty two-dimensional?
It's necessary. It's like, honestly, I just wouldn't do it if I couldn't. If like I have to center myself in what's important, because it's so infuriating if you don't. If you're looking at metrics, if you're thinking about, the way the platforms control our entertainment, like it's like you will just be mad. And if you decide that, okay, the reason I do music in the first place is to share myself and connect with people, there's something that's very true and difficult about music, is that there is a need for an audience. I would not be satisfied if I were just singing in the shower. I do need somebody to receive what it is I'm doing. And that's genuine. That's not like a sense of ego. That's not like, I need to build my following. That's, I need people to receive this, right? I need to sing for somebody else. And to center that and to remember that like what I'm doing here is sharing. and not building my career keeps me sane. And because otherwise, like, it's frustrating. Otherwise, it's terrifying. Otherwise, it's enraging. And I don't want to get lost in that. I want to recognize that what works still is human connection and community and meeting people, right? And that's been what's really valuable for me throughout the process as I've released music and, you know, been in LA. The things that I take away are not how many streams I have on Spotify. It's like how many real people I've met and how many friends I've made and what they're doing and how we're all doing it together.
Yeah.
That feels important. And that feels like something I can hang my hat on and know that this is not shallow. This is real.
Very real. And especially when, you know, so few people, I mean, there's armchair quarterbacks for every career.
Yeah.
And, you know, especially when it's such a consumption oriented culture and digital landscape, it's easy to just say, oh, I could do that, X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
You know, 0.001% are going to put out the music that you do, and you don't even fully have a picture of all the people you may touch.
Yeah.
You may touch with however many streams you have. I just feel like you're an incredibly good communicator of your own journey, which somehow becomes universal.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm really doing most of it by the seat of my pants and just trying to be as honest as I can and going with whatever feeling I've got when I'm doing it. There's a commitment to consistency, but there's no grand strategy. And I think that in some ways that's beneficial because it's authentic. It's here's where I'm at. Here's what I've got for you today. And when I'm doing something that's tongue in cheek, it's probably because I'm feeling self-conscious or insecure about what it is that I'm doing, talking into a camera. And I need to be honest with that. And I need to be honest with myself or I wouldn't do it. You know what I mean? If I'm faking it and it feels shitty, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to keep doing it. So finding a way that just feels real is usually the best path, right? And finding ways where I'm imitating or trying to do something, those things don't tend to work.
Yeah, you seem very open about your emotions and your feelings in every moment. Like I remember when you were on the Troubadour stage, you said, I don't know, several times something about like, how cool is it that you were just so grateful for the opportunity to be in the moment. And that's what I think is really coming across in your music. I want to speak a little bit to love.
Sure.
Which is a major theme in this album and in a lot of your work. You wrote, love only makes us more capable of doing the hard work that life sets down in front of us. So that's not like normal pop songwriting. It's not what I would expect, someone who fell in love with someone in France and moved and had this beautiful journey. It's almost like you're saying, yes, this love is possible, but you still have to do hard work, and it's just a part of the journey. So maybe speak a little bit to that overarching theme and how you also balance even writing these love songs with your wife right here. Listen, what's that process like of going through that journey?
Look, I spent a long time, what felt like interminable years single and pining after, well, I just need to find my person. And then I did. And like I said, look, lots of beautiful things came out of that period, but I was deeply dissatisfied. I was not saved. And even to this day, I realized that I believe so tremendously in what my wife does and her project and what she's building. But the best way for me to support her in becoming a queen is to be a king. And I can't wait for her to like pop off and save me, you know? We need to be growing at the same time, at the same pace, and we need to be using each other as partners to support one another, to push one another, to bring each other to the place where we want to be. So it can't just be this like, okay, well now we fell in love, end of the movie. Right? Like, okay, we fell in love and now let's go help. Now I've got somebody who can be in it with me, who I can have by my side to do the hard work, right? Because doing hard work by yourself sucks. Doing hard work with somebody else who's also doing their own version of it, much easier. So yeah, I just think like that felt really just like, it felt like the honest expression of my experience. Like during the pandemic, it was this funny thing where everybody was kind of miserable and stuck inside and I couldn't stay in one place. We were bouncing around all over the place. And from the outside, it was really, really charmed and beautiful. And it was, there's no denying it. But like, I kept finding myself in these places where I was like, I would feel bad putting this on Instagram because I feel too charmed. This feels too perfect. Too many people are at home suffering and I'm not as happy as it looks. Like I was happy in certain moments for sure, but like even when we're kind of on these picture perfect moments, there's a lot of inner turmoil. And I think that's again because I wasn't connected to a sense of purpose, I wasn't connected to a sense of community, and I wasn't connected to who I was as an artist. And I think like if I'm not helping, if I'm not contributing, if I'm just soaking in the sun, that gets old real quick, even if you've got the love of your life by your side. Yeah, it felt very important to wrestle with that feeling of I have everything I could ever want and I'm still not happy. Well, it's because I need to go actually live my life now.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's such an interesting balance. Oh, I'm so happy so I can show off this stuff, but I'm nervous about it, so I need to show the shitty parts on my Instagram account. So
Yeah.
I remember seeing in your Substack, you have like 3 gratefuls for the week, and you're trying to actively make this as almost as much of a process of your own growth in addition to the songwriting. And I'm sure it informs that. What tips or day-to-day things do you do and your wife to maintain non-braggy, positive optimism anywhere?
Honestly, the gratitude thing is just, I would not be a user of social media if I weren't an artist. I think when I'm at my happiest and best, I don't have that stuff on my phone. I'm just not using it. But the reality of the world is you got to adapt, right? And so for me, something that was just helpful was, okay, this is something that I have to do, so I might as well find a way to use it in the most healthy, positive way for me. So I know I should be doing, everybody talks about the value of a gratitude practice. Everybody talks about how important it is just to sit and think about what's some things that are good in your life and just spend 30 seconds to a minute, 5 minutes, whatever, doing that as often as possible. So I said, well, let me just do that and post it on my Instagram. And now I'm killing 2 birds with 1 stone, and I'm using this thing that ordinary little to me. I'm not somebody that wants to be out there bragging, or I'm not somebody that's just trying to take a picture of myself in my gym clothes at home on the couch. That's just not, I don't do that. Even when I'm on vacation or I'm traveling, I don't pull out my phone. I want to sit there and look at the sunset. I don't want to take a picture of it. So here was a way that I could at least engage with what I know I sort of feel obligated to do, but do it for myself and just find a method that's all right, but this works for the platform too. And so that was really, really valuable. And it's just also become a form of, it's a weird creative exercise too. So yeah, my advice, if I could give any, is find something that you should be doing for yourself anyway, and see if you can make a way to translate that to social media, because then it's a genuine thing for yourself and you just happen to be sharing it, versus it's a presentation or a performance for other people. Some people like that, I don't.
Yeah, there's a lot of work that seems to have come into this album release. You even mentioned the many things you've tried in spirituality and the self-work practices. What do you think has enabled you to be present enough to go to these vacations and not pull out your phone? Even, I don't know if you follow Rick Rubin, the idea of source, and I think you mentioned you didn't finish Artist Way.
If you finished Artist Way, you're lying.
Yeah, it's true. One chapter.
Doesn't mean it's not valuable.
Yeah, I mean, what has been the most helpful for your process to just be a more holistic human and have it inform that songwriting overall?
15 years of therapy and psychedelic drugs. Yeah, and having a good community of people around me. So I come from New York. We were talking about this earlier. Coming out to LA, especially as a New Yorker, you do have a certain sense of these fucking assholes, these woo-woo motherfuckers. There's a cynicism that I think New York or the East Coast breeds that's valuable, right? There is a certain sense of having a BS meter, but then you also are able to show up here and see oh no, there's tremendous value in some of these practices if you hold them in the right way. If you think that rubbing your crystals is gonna bring a genie to grant you your wishes, I'm not sure I believe in you. But if you understand that setting a certain intention and thinking about something and holding something as an objective loosely in your hand and putting some concentration into it and allowing for that to maybe arrive because you've been focused on it over the course of time, that's manifesting, right? And I just think being out here and being in such a supportive place where people are really open to whatever it is you're going for. It's a very lean in kind of a city, Los Angeles is. Whatever your thing is, people are going to say yeah, go for it. I love that for you, which can be a little vapid at times as well. But I think having that spirit around was really important. Getting a sense of it, being able to swim in those waters and feel okay, I understand the spirituality side of this in my own context. I can bring a little bit of a balance of the East and the West. I think a great example of it is actually, I found a yoga studio that I really love. I just had hurt my back, right? Coming out of New York, I had bad back problems, which I'm sure is related to stress and lifestyle and all those kinds of things. So I came out to Los Angeles and I really needed to do yoga to function. It was just recommended to me by a physical therapist. I no longer had health insurance, and they were the best thing you could do is go do yoga. Yeah. And I wound up founding a yoga studio run by a guy named Joe. And it's you know what I mean? He's a guy named Joe from Chicago who runs this yoga studio, and it's a beautiful, it's a great workout. It's a beautiful space, and there is enough spirituality that, especially coming from a dude named Joe from Chicago, that I buy it, right? And I'm with it. And it's not too much where I'm okay, And I think that's been a really important thing, is to find that healthy balance. So back to the album, right? There is a role for the cynic. There's also a role for the hopeless romantic and the spiritual seeker and the optimist and the, you know, and the guru. All of those different parts of your personality should be embraced and shouldn't be shut down. And I do think it's important to have that cynic here who's like a little bit got their, or skeptic maybe is a better word, who's got their eyebrow raised. But there's also room to like lower the eyebrow, dude, and like enjoy the fact that we're sitting here doing some energy healing, you know?
Do your songs ever serve as the counterbalance? If you're like, oh man, that, you know, Ash and Smoke, you were talking about being a little bit on the spiritual side. Do you ever self-censor because of these, or are you just letting yourself go?
Yeah, let it go. Whatever I'm feeling at that moment. I think I run into trouble when I get too like rational about what I'm going to say or do. I think there's value of like having some intentional thought about what it is that's on your mind and trying to like distill that down in your brain, but then let the song arrive. Versus saying, I'm going to write a song today about my spirituality. I'm wrestling with my spirituality in my therapy sessions, in my conversations with people, in my own time, just sitting and being on a couch and sitting in silence and thinking about nothing. Like, then allowing that to then pass through. Usually when a song comes, it's just I hear a line in my head and I recognize it. I go, oh, that's a cool phrase. And I don't know necessarily what it is yet, but I think the training of being a songwriter allows you to both hear things a little bit more quickly and go, oh, that's a line, but also then to know, oh, that's not just line. That's the first line of a song, or that's a chorus, and being able to then fit it to the rest of what you're exploring. I see it a little bit as like being an archaeologist. Like you find like one little piece of the fossil, but you're able to know, oh, if I trace it that way, I'll find the rest of the dinosaur. And that's like the craft and the technique. But you sometimes just got to stumble on a freaking dinosaur head, you know? Like, and I think that like for the most part, go out into darkness and see what shows up, you know, trust that you'll find some light there that'll guide you towards it without saying like, I am going and I'm looking to do this particular thing. Like that's just never worked for me.
Wow. Yeah. And what dinosaur heads, or what were the most surprising finds in your musical dig on this album?
I'd say, well, there's one like surprise of like, I think it's always cool when something in your subconscious is working more than what's working in your conscious. I remember there's one line where I just stumbled upon a word that it felt like it fit, and I didn't even really remember what it was. So there's a line in the song Time and Time Again where I reference Calliope.
Yeah.
Who I was lying in bed one night and that word just came to me and I was like, I know what this is, but I don't really know who or what. I know it's like a Greek word. And it turns out it's a muse, right? It was one of the primary muses of music, you know? And I think my reference from it, there's a Springsteen lyric where he's referring to the Calliope fell to the ground from the song Blinded by the Light, where he's talking about like a merry-go-round kind of ride. But I just kind of had that word in the back of my head. I didn't know what it was about, but then I like looked it up the next day and I was like, oh, that's the perfect word for what I'm trying to say here. In why, I have no idea. Like, where did that come from? Somewhere in the back of my head, it was just stewing. And so I do think you have to trust those moments of like...
Well, in that song specifically, I remember remarking it has such a almost like blurted out type of quality with rhythm before you jump into Time and Time Again.
Yeah.
From a rhythmic perspective, I sense this pent-up energy and almost explosion.
Yeah.
Times.
Yeah, totally.
I feel like that resonates with what you're talking about, with these things just pop up and you grab.
Yeah, absolutely. And that song in particular, that's another maybe surprising one. That's probably the most like pop hook of a song that I've ever written. In part because my girlfriend at the time was like, you should write more like catchy hooks. And I was like, I write catchy hooks. Okay, fine, I'll write a catchier hook. And I was kind of already dealing with these verses that I had, and I didn't know what to do with them. And they were kind of dark. They were definitely wrestling with themes of love and themes of partnership, and they were about clearly my relationship with her. I didn't know where they were going. And then she's like, well, you should write catchier hooks. And so I said, okay, fine. I'm going to write a love song, pop hook. And I think that then that speaks to the duality and these kind of like tensions that you've been bringing up a lot. It's like, it wasn't something that was intentional. It was something that was just real. It was just something that was happening to me. I was wrestling with all these kind of darker, difficult emotions. How do I deal with being in love while the world is falling apart? How do I feel happy right now when everything is so dark and difficult? Okay, just write a fucking pop hook, dude. And like, let the chorus be beautiful. Let the chorus be fun. Let the chorus be a chorus. And it was simply just like that nudge came at that moment in time. And so I wrote the chorus, you know? And so, and I think that then allows that duality to feel authentic because it wasn't planned out.
Yeah. Wow, I've definitely had creative moments where it's like, I'll show you. I don't know.
Yeah. I did that too, for sure.
And I think you also mentioned, what if this is good enough came from a writers group kind of energy?
Yeah. Shout out to the Soft Spot Songwriters Accountability Group. Rainey Blake runs that, and I did it twice, and both times I did it, I hated it. I was so, because I'm not someone that's usually like sitting, I need to put on my big boy pants, and it feels like going to work, and it's difficult. And so like for a couple of weeks, I would just like the night of the deadline at like if the deadline was like 12 p.m. or 12 a.m., I would like at 10:30 be like, okay, fuck, I gotta write a song. and I would just like make something and be like, this is bad, but screw it, whatever, it doesn't matter, you know? And doing that a couple of weeks in a row, you do build a muscle.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it's like, okay, I've actually been forcing myself to practice and write songs every week for now 4 or 5 weeks. And then all of a sudden on the 6th week, it just came out. And that happened twice, where like same experience where I was like struggling, hated it, not really doing it with my full heart, but just making sure that I was in the practice of writing. And then a song fell out very quickly a few weeks later, a few weeks into it. And so, yeah, that song, What If This Is Good Enough, I think it's one of the best songs I've ever written. And I wrote it, it's one of the shortest songs in terms of like the writing time. I think I wrote it in like a day, maybe even like a morning. I remember just kind of waking up and being like, kind of like the dinosaur head. Like I just woke up with this line, what if this is good enough? And I was like, it's my plans. I got to finish this song. It's here.
You in your place in society, in your career, but is this body of work good enough? And of course.
Wrestled with that for sure. Definitely had to answer that own question for myself.
Yeah. If you had to write a song about this album's journey, what do you think the themes would be?
I mean, the biggest one is the closer, and that was the last song that I wrote. It's called "Did You Think It'd Be Easy?" Yeah. So that felt also very meta as I was writing, because it was not. Both the journey of writing the album and that particular song was the hardest song to write, and I think that also speaks to like at the beginning of the album, the song "The End," very frustrated, very angry, very cynical, a little like aggressive and even profane. The last song on the album is still dealing with all of those same things, but with a little bit of sense of humor, with like a little bit of like, it's holding it lighter, and it's not giving up hope. It's still focused on trying to change the world, make the world a better place. It's still angry about the ways in which things are not how I think they should be. But I'm in process, you know, and we're all, you know, it was definitely not going to be easy, right? It definitely wasn't going to happen quickly. So I think allowing myself that grace was also important. So I think I think that song summates everything I was going through in the process of making the album.
I laughed at the last song too, because I was thinking, did you think it would be easy to listen to the album and absorb everything that you wanted to say as a fan? But I think you hold yourself to a high emotional standard, and I think the people that resonate with that are ready to dig in and know nothing's going to be easy, but it's worth the ride.
Yeah. I definitely took away, this is like, I hope this isn't like bro culture anymore, but David Foster Wallace, the author of Infinite Jest, used to say that he wanted to write things that the more you put in, the more you get out. And I very much buy into that. And that's not to say that there isn't like value in something that's quick and easy. We have a lot of quick and easy. So my thing, I like reading books, listening to albums, digging into things that are a little bit longer, a little bit tougher. Yeah. And I think we need to make sure that we're still stocking our cultural coffers with that, because we get so much quick, easy served up to us, and that can be worth a lot. I don't want to discount the value of, hey, I've had a rough day and I just need to put on whatever, Netflix. Yeah, comfort food. I think there was a younger version of me that would be like, well, whatever, you like trash. But let people like their trash, you know? That's fine. Yeah. But I think that there's also a place, if you're only listening to, or watching trash or whatever, let's maybe not call it trash, let's call it comfort food. That's better. If you're only eating comfort food, you're going to get fat, you know? And so we need to have our salads, or we need to make our like lengthier full course meal, and remember that that's something that I don't need all the time, but I do need some of the time. Okay.
Well, I'm thinking about your amazing journey. What advice would you have given to the David who moved here X number of years ago, you know, embarking on this songwriter journey, and kind of what would you advise anyone who wants to go on a creative path like you?
Part of the spiritual journey of my last handful of years led me to, there's this one particular phrase, I guess you could call it a mantra: be patient, trust the process, enjoy the ride. Those three things feel really important to me, and they feel like they encapsulate a lot of it. Currently, and in the last chapter, I think the most important one has been enjoy the ride. I think it's really important to be patient. Things tend to happen a lot slower than you think they would. It's important to trust the ride because things do tend, or trust the process, sorry, because things do tend to play out differently than how you would expect them to, but you get where you're going. I've constantly found myself stressing about something to then arrive at what I was stressing about and realize, what was I stressing about, dude? So allowing myself to go through the ups and downs, allowing myself to really enjoy the highs, to also in some ways enjoy the lows, but overall it's a roller coaster. So like you're on the roller coaster to do this, you know, like I didn't sign up for the lazy river, which has like, I love a lazy river too, but like know what you're going into, especially if you're going into an artistic practice, like it ain't going to be steady. And I think recognizing that, appreciating that, and remembering that I do this because I love it, and remembering that if it's not bringing me joy, I shouldn't be doing it.
Wow, beautifully said. David, this has been a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, it has been. Thank you.
I hope everyone checks out your new album. Where can they find you?
Sure. David Red on all the social medias. It's the David Red because somebody else named David Red took it first. And yeah, or davidred.substack.com. That's probably the best place.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and thank you so much, David, for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Cheers.